And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Elise Holtzman. Now, Elise, thanks for squeezing me into your really packed schedule. It took us a few weeks to get you on the calendar, but I'm glad that we finally connected. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm glad we were persistent and got the date on the calendar. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, good. I am too. And there's just a little nugget there for all of our listeners is persistence does pay off, And so I know we went back and forth probably 4 times in rescheduling things. It's just that you're busy, I'm busy, and it just finally happened. So be persistent as you're following up with prospects, as you're working with new vendors, and just stay there, because most people are good people and they want to get together. It's just a timing thing. So if you take nothing else out of this podcast, take that, but you're going to take a lot out of it, because Elise is she's a former practicing lawyer. She's also an executive coach and a consultant, and the founder of the Lawyer's Edge. And the Lawyer's Edge is where for the last 12 years, she's worked with law firms to grow their business. And she helps lawyers become better business developers, better leaders, rainmakers, as she calls it. She really helps them with their leadership skills so that they can help their employees grow a great firm, market better, gain clients, retain clients. She really does some cool work. So she speaks frequently on this around the country. And she also, by the way, hosts the Lawyer's Edge podcast, which I want you to go listen to because it's really cool. But I want to talk to Elise today a little bit about this whole area around leadership and mindset. And really, Elise, as it relates to employee retention, because a lot of people are, after we've come through the pandemic, a lot of people have been looking at their lives saying, well, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, or maybe I'm not feeling valued or appreciated in my law firm or in my company. Speak to that, will you, as far as how can leaders of businesses, law firms, how do we treat our employees? How do we love them? How do we affirm them? What do we need to be thinking about and doing to really build a great culture and lead that organization?
Michael, I think the first thing to do is to recognize that it's not enough to hire people, give them work to do, and pay them, right? We've got to be concerned with developing cultures. There's more, and you know this, and your listeners know this, there's more to running a solid business than just putting the right people in the right seats and paying them what they're worth. For most people, it's not just about the money and it's not just about the title. It's about more than that. And, sometimes in business, we don't want to get all mushy gushy and earthy crunchy about, what it is going on with the people. But one of the things that we've seen in the last year and a half is that, as you say, people are reevaluating their lives. For many, many people, for most people, this has been extremely disruptive. And while there are some nice things that have come out of it, maybe you were able to spend more time with your family. You were able to connect with people on Zoom or some other platform that you hadn't talked to in a while. It made it feel like it was easier to connect with people who are outside of your local area. There are also some really challenging things that came along. And so some people are saying, well, do I want to do this anymore? Do I want to go back to the office 5 days a week or even 3 days a week? And so some organizations are starting to notice that they are losing their talent. People are saying, you know what, I've decided I'm going to go do something else. And I think some of the business owners are blindsided by it. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean? I thought everything was okay. They weren't taking the temperature of their people. They weren't really noticing some of the disconnect that's going on. And so I think the first thing is awareness.
I love it. And the phrase that just hit me when you were just walking through that, and awareness is spot on. But I said, leaders lead. And too many times we have people leading organizations, law firms, who forget to lead the organization because they're so focused on we need more clients coming in the door.
Right. So there's a big difference between leading and managing. And people, I think, often don't see the difference between those two things. So managing is sort of making sure that everything's running the way it's supposed to be, right? That operations are going smoothly, the bills are getting paid, the invoices are being collected. And yes, being able to make sure the clients are coming in is part of operating a business. The leadership is a different thing. And part of that is being able to see the big picture, being able to see the 30,000-foot view, and asking questions that for people who like details and for people who just like to sort of execute and check boxes off can be a little annoying, right? And a little soul sucking, like, oh, why do I have to look at this big picture and the long term and the 30,000-foot view? Like, I just want to get in there and get stuff done. And I relate to that because I do a lot of work with a set of personality tools. And one of the things I know about myself is, I'm an executor. I like to check boxes off. I like to, if you've got something done, I'm your girl, I'm going to get it done. But leading requires a different skill set. And that is stepping back and saying, what do we want this place to look like? What do we want the culture to be? What do we want people to be saying about us? How do we want people to feel when they interact with us, whether it's our colleagues or our clients? And so, and sometimes that's a little harder, especially for my, my target market, which is largely lawyers and law firms. We tend to overpopulate when it comes to people like me who like to just get stuff done. So, the leadership is important and having a little bit bigger of a vision. I also think another thing is to recognize how damaging it can be to your business to lose talent, right? So there are so many costs associated with that. One of them is simply the cost of having to go out into the marketplace, find somebody else who can do the same job, train them up, not be able to get the same productivity out of them right away that you might have gotten out of the prior person. But then there are other sorts of costs, right? Again, cultural costs, other people in your organization reacting to the loss of this person, et cetera. So it's worthwhile to spend some time thinking about how can we engage and retain our people.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. I'm a big book reader. And one of the books that I just recently finished is called A CEO Only Does Three Things. And it talks about the three things are culture, exactly what you're talking about, then people, and then the numbers. And they have to do all three. But it was really insightful how this author positioned those three things and said, as CEO needs to be focused on those things. Exactly what you're saying is that a managing partner in a law firm needs to be that CEO who understands the culture, because if you start having turnover of people, it affects the culture. And that's really a long-term fix. That's not something you can just come in and say, at least fix this. Well, there are underlying issues, right? And it comes through the mindset and really the heart of the leadership team to know who they are. Because, it's funny, you're talking about you're a task person, right? My son's just like you. I'm just the opposite. All the tasks and things drive me batty. I'm the big-eyed visionary strategic guy, right? So I've got to make sure as I lead my company that when it comes to, we have a process that isn't working well, I don't just say, yeah, well, somebody go do that. I've got to dig down in the deeps and do the soul-sucking work, as you say, of getting down in there and fixing it, because that's my job as a leader, to love on my people and make their job easier for them. And so I think leaders many times forget that one of our primary jobs is to set the tone for the culture and to look at our people and say, how do I break down any barriers that are in your way? Do we have processes that are really barriers to you getting your job done? Is there something that we have set in place or that we're doing that needs to be changed? Leadership is really, it's looking down the road, like you said. It's loving your people and saying, how do I help you flourish and grow? Even if that means someday you might leave me, that might be okay. But sometimes it's that you're going to make my company even better than it is because you might be better at something than I am.
Well, 100%. And it's also recognizing that leadership skill may not come naturally to you, right? As I said before, because in most fields, whether it's legal or any other, when you're more junior, your job is about doing, right? You're executing on a whole bunch of initiatives that somebody told you need to execute on. Then people want to assume leadership, right? They want to become more senior. They want to make partner or director or managing director, whatever it is. And they start to rely, they say, well, I've always been successful up until now because I've done these 5 things. Well, guess what? The job you want, the role you want is actually quite different from the role that you're now inhabiting and that you're so good at. And so in order for you to become a leader, you've got to be willing to shift what's been working for you all along, which is scary. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to now do something different than I did before. It's not a natural progression from one role to another. And so if you've been the person that's been executing and doing a great job, and then now you have this opportunity to become a leader, there's a whole new set of skills you need to learn, a whole new set of behaviors you need to adopt, a whole new set of attitudes and beliefs that you need to adopt as well in order to be able to be successful as a leader. So, many of us think that we're successful because of the things we do. And sometimes we continue to be successful in spite of the things we do. So I think it is important to, to say, okay, what skills and attitudes, behaviors, all those things are required for this next role that I'm inhabiting, or the role that I've been in for a few years and I'm not quite figuring out. And you can get help with that, right? You can, as you say, you can read tons of books, you can listen to this podcast and others, you can have coaches and mentors and people can help you with that. But when you're the leader, it's your job to recognize what's missing there so that you can be the person who holds the vision for the entire team and make sure they have the resources that they need in order to be successful.
Yeah. Wow. So much there that we need to unpack. Whether you're growing as the leader of that law firm, or let's say you're a newer lawyer, let's say you've been with the firm 5 years and you're growing within that law firm, and you're moved in a position where now you're leading a team. Even that, you've got to have a different mindset, because just as you said, what got you here isn't going to get you to the next step, because managing people and a team and leading them, I think it was John Maxwell told me this years ago, that you manage things, you lead people. And I think so many times when you're a doer, we're just checking off the boxes and we're getting things done. But then when you start managing people, that doesn't work too well. Right? You've got to encourage them and relate to them and help them grow. And so many times I know in my past, I've been placed in a leadership role. I felt like a duck out of water. I didn't know what to do. And heaven forbid, I can't ask the people who just put me in that position.
Right.
That's
the problem.
What do you do?
Right. That's one of the problems. And that's why so many C-level executives in companies and business owners and, managing partner types in law firms and that sort of thing wind up hiring coaches and mentors and finding mentors, because they often need somebody who's outside of their little circle. Right. As you say, you don't want to go to the people who put you in this position and say, guys, I have no freaking idea what I'm doing right now. But thanks for paying me this salary. Right. And you're also not going to your direct reports and telling them that you have no idea what's going on. So there you are all by yourself, freaking out because you don't totally know what you're doing. And so, there are a lot of challenges around that. And I think that it is lonely at the top. I mean, there's that cliche, it's lonely at the top. And I think that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, it is. And one of the best things when I got promoted to a C-level position is the COO came to me and he says, Michael, we know you're young. We want to find you a coach. And so they actually hired a coach for me for a year. Best thing that ever happened for them and for me. And not everybody's going to do that. But even if a company doesn't, let's talk about that person who's in that new role, or who maybe wants to be in a leadership role and realizes they may not have all of the skills, talents, mindset, beliefs that they need in order to get that, because I'm sure there are opportunities that they're vying for, right? Maybe they got passed up once or twice and they want to grow themselves. Let's talk about you and in your organizations and how do you help people grow? What are the types of things you help them try to understand or that you bring to the table to help them grow to be a great leader in any organization, especially a law firm?
So I'm definitely going to answer that question. But I want to go back to one thing you said, and you talked about this idea. This goes back to the idea of engaging and retaining your top talent. Your organization decided to hire that coach for you, and they viewed it as an investment, or they wouldn't have done it. right? So one of the ways in which they engage you is they said, listen, we believe in you. We know you're young, but we know you have tremendous potential, but we want to get you some support. We don't want to just hang you out to dry and have to figure this out yourself.
Yeah.
And so my guess is that for you, part of it was like, wow, they believe in me, right? I feel really good about this.
Yeah.
And they're not telling me, oh, there's something wrong with you for not knowing everything. They get that. That's part of my growth. And they're here to support me as I grow into this leadership role. So when you want to hold on to your best people, I think it's really important to look at look at some things you can do for them as an investment rather than a cost.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to answer your question, one of the things that that I do with people who are looking for their next leadership role is to help them figure out, first of all, why do they want the role, right? Is it about the title? Is it about the money? Is it about they want to do something cool and interesting, and they're just somebody who really likes to grow? So part of it is, why do you even want this? What's this going to do for you? And what I find with most people when I ask them those sorts of questions is that you get the surface stuff
right
first. Well, I just, that's the next thing. And I want to make more money and I know I can do it. And then you start digging underneath the surface a little bit and you find out some of the real reasons. I want to make sure that there's a lot of stability for my family. I want to really, step into the best of who I can be. I love learning and growing and I get bored otherwise, right? And you start to see the things that they deeply care about. So I think connecting with that, because it's not easy, right? It's not easy. It's going to take a lot of work. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes and feel stupid or embarrassed. So I think connecting with your own why is really important. And then, another thing is what I look at this in two levels. So let's say you're at a law firm and you want to make partner. What in general is typically required to make partner? Like, what does a partner look like? It's that old expression about, walking like a duck, quacking like a duck, that kind of thing. It must be a duck, right? So what do partners do and say, and how do they behave? And what are they thinking about that you're not currently thinking about? But then more than that, what does it require in your organization, right? Because as we've discussed, every organizational culture is going to be different. So I think there's a two-level inquiry. What is in general required for me, for example, to be a successful business owner? I manufacture widgets, I sell widgets. What is required for me to, be a successful business owner or to be the successful right-hand person to the business owner? And then what does that look like in this particular organization?
That's great.
That's a good place to go, because without the information, people just sort of bumble into positions and they may not be prepared for them.
Yeah. And something I've told people to do, and I've done it myself, and I love your feedback, is let's say you're that junior partner and you're wanting to make partner. You can try to figure all this stuff out yourself. And that's not a bad thing, but it's also not a bad thing sometimes just to go to the boss and to say, hey, I would love I'm working to become a partner. I know it might take me 5 years, but that's my dream. That's my goal. Can you help me figure out how I need to be? Would you meet with me a couple times a year? I mean, is that good counsel? Is that bad? What do you think about somebody just going to their higher ups and saying, here are my desires? Does that communicate that I want to be part of this team? Or
yeah, I think your suggestion is incredibly important. It's a great idea. Why not let them know what your goals are? Sometimes it's the people inside the firm who can be the most helpful to you. And they want to make that investment for you. I mean, if somebody in my business came to me and said, hey, I want to knock this thing out of the park. I want to help you grow your business. I want us to be the best we can be. And at the same time, I want to grow into a senior leadership position. And, are there things you can tell me? Are there things that I can learn from you? Are there ways that I can be helpful to you that I'm not currently being helpful to you? Why on earth would I not want to hear that from somebody? And human nature is that if somebody wants to invest in me and my vision and my dream, I'm more likely to want to invest in them. And so, don't hide the ball. Don't keep it a secret. You want to raise your profile inside your organization, and not in any sort of icky, chest beating way, but to be of service to other people, right? Be of service to the business, be of service to the clients, be of service to the people who are managing and leading the organization, because they're going to pay more attention to people who are invested in them.
Yeah, very much so. And I love what you just said there. Pay more attention. Let's talk about that a little bit, because so many times leaders, business leaders, forget that people will work for us for more than money. Okay, so we pay people, and we want to pay them well, but to get their heart, that usually doesn't come through the pocketbook, if in my opinion, right? You work. You've got to have a base level of income and all that. But what you just described to somebody coming and saying, I want to make this thing thrive, that's a heart level thing. That's somebody who's bought into you and your pack. How does a leader start working on that aspect of their leadership, their communication, their culture, to realize, yeah, you can give somebody a pay raise. That may not be the best thing to give them. I mean, we all like more money, but there are other intangibles, right?
Right.
What would you say?
I think it's important for people to recognize, as we've been discussing, that, as you say, people do work for more than a paycheck. There are people who, because of who they are and how they're wired, go to work every day to have an impact, or they go to work every day to help people, or they go to work every day to get results. And so when you just throw work at them and just look at them as worker bee number 12, they don't feel valued. They don't feel seen, right? They don't feel that they're being invested in and cared about. Somebody else is going to be able to attract them, even if they're paying them the same thing, right? All other things being equal, if I'm getting paid $10 and you're getting paid $10, but I can go to your firm, get paid $10, and somebody's gonna, bring in really cool speakers, or, ask me my opinion on things, or, whatever it may be, and show me that I'm part of a team and make me feel like I'm part of something larger than just being the worker bee, then I'm going to go there. Yep. Right. Because that's human nature. We want to be heard. We want to be appreciated. And so there are going to be business owners and leaders, Michael, who say, look, I pay these people. They're lucky to have a job. And right. You know what? Yes, you do pay them. And so they are absolutely required to do the job that you have hired them to do. And they are lucky to have a job. Excuse me. Anybody who has a job right now is lucky to have a job. It's a very difficult time for people. But is that what you're going for? Right. Is people who just feel obligated to you and who are just going through the motions to do their work? So I think it is about the culture, and it's about being intentional about culture. What do you want people to do? What do you want to develop intentionally in your organization? And so it may be that you have to ask people questions. What would make this a great workplace for you? What would make you want to come to work? Like right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you enjoy being here? Okay, so it's a 4.5. That's bad news for you and for them. Okay, not what would make it a 10. What would make it a 6? Let's start with that. What would make it a 6? And you may hear from people. I'm hearing from my clients right now that they're feeling very disconnected from their clients. They're feeling very disconnected from their colleagues, which results in a lack of motivation. Some of them are just feeling down in the dumps and they're not totally sure why. And so I think a lot of this is just being as more people-centered than you've been in the past.
That is so good. Be intentional about your culture. And I want to go back to that, asking your people. So if you're a leader of a business and you have this feeling that things may not be great or whatever, go ask your people. And now I'm very biased on this, and so you may totally disagree with me, and that's okay. I would say first, don't go out and hire some firm to do some internal thing, because I've done that. I've been in those twice, and you don't get the real answers. I just pull everybody together and have a brunch and say, okay, how do we make this thing a better place? And just tell me, and what I found is when you can open yourself up to that, nobody's going to take crack shots at you. And they're going to, pretty soon you're going to get the real answers of how can we make this place better, and realize that you may need to change, and that's okay.
So it's interesting, Michael, because one of the challenges with that approach, so I love that approach. And I think that approach works really well when people already feel that there are open lines of communication. Maybe they've been slowed down a little bit or cut off a little bit because things have been crazy for a few months, or we've been in a pandemic for a year. But if that trust isn't there already, and you try to go into a room with the people that you work with and say, hey, no, really, I really want to know, tell me what's going on for you guys, you are not going to get the answers. And I have that with a client right now. They are losing a lot of people. I reported back to them that I'm hearing a lot of discontent, and I was concerned that they were going to start losing talent, which is what has started happening. And their first reaction was, we're going to go ask them all these questions and try to fix things. It's like, that's great, but they're not going to tell you the truth. You know, if you're a fifth-year associate at a law firm and the senior managing partner comes to you and says, okay, tell me why you're miserable and why might you leave and what don't you like about me and the firm, you're not going to get answers because they're afraid that you're going to, you're going to use it against them. And so I agree with you that it's better not to have outside firms do this sort of thing. But if you can find somebody internally that people trust to talk to, that's a good start. And another thing you can do is an anonymous survey. And really make it anonymous, right? Where you send out a survey and you make it very clear to everybody, this is an anonymous survey, but we're not kidding. We really, really want to know what's going on. We value your opinion. We're not retaliating against anybody. We really need your help.
And on that, and on all of these, making sure that after you ask the questions and get the feedback, you circle back and you say, okay, and here's what we heard you say,
right?
And here's what we're going to do.
Right. Well, there's an example of a firm where, they will interview people and they say to people, we want everybody at the firm to make sure they really like the person we're hiring. So they have a number of people interview the person, and then the managing partner makes the decision and never goes back to the people who did the interviewing to ask them what they thought. So, they're paying lip service to this idea that we care what you think, when really what they're doing is showing the prospective hire all these great people in the firm. Right. And so people have said to me, well, I don't know why I'm happy to do the interviewing. And, the person I talked to was terrific. But I just found out that we hired this person on our email system. Nobody ever asked me what I thought. So yes, you have to follow up. Don't just make a show of asking people what they care about and asking people for their input and then not actually following through with it, because you lose credibility and trust that way. And that's another reason that people will leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you're sitting there scratching your head and start pointing fingers. And that's the beginning of a downward spiral.
Well, and sometimes it pays to point the finger at yourself, and not in any critical way. I mean, I'm not trying to, I often say to people, I want to raise this issue with you. This is not criticism. This is simply an observation, because the criticism, I'm not asking business owners or CEOs to go home and beat themselves up at night over this. What I'm saying is just become more self-aware. You're doing the best you can. You're doing the best you can so far with what you have, but now here's additional information, right? Here's additional information and permission to shift what you're doing, to be open, to not know everything, to be curious. And so be curious without being critical of yourself. But that does require some inquiry. Instead of pointing the fingers at other people, well, hey, obviously he didn't have it in him if he left the firm. Well, maybe you didn't have something that he needed in order to succeed.
Yeah. Wow. That is great counsel right there. Looking at the person in the mirror first and saying, how can I change? How can I be a better leader? And if I've taken anything out of this conversation, it's leadership is really at the core of business growth. If you're wanting to have a successful law firm or a business of any nature, you've got to look at yourself as the leader. And Michael Gerber wrote the book, The E-Myth.
I was, it's so funny. I was literally about to mention the E-Myth. So that's so funny that we came up with it at the same time. Yeah, that's the idea, right? Is that you went into business because you were really good at something. And then you find out that growing that business means becoming good at something that you probably know nothing about.
Yes.
And that's scary. And that's scary. And it's understandable that it's scary. It's just not desirable to let it hold you back. So, I often use that terminology. It's understandable, but it's not desirable. So let's make a shift.
I like it. Understandable, but not desirable. I'm writing that down, by the way. Desirable. I have to forget. There you go. No, that's a great phrase, and I love how you approach somebody with in a. It's not criticism. This is just a perspective. This is what I'm seeing. Can we have a conversation around this? I may be totally wrong, but here's what I'm seeing. And now, it gives that leader the opportunity to take in some information and go, maybe I need to change something, or maybe something needs to change in our organization. And I may not have the answer, but you know what? My team might. Let me go ask them. And what I found in leading different organizations is the more I involve my team and get their opinions and really seek their opinions and go, okay, that's good. I mean, some of the best things I've ever done in business have come from an idea somebody else had, and we just executed it and give them credit for it. It's like, I don't have to have credit for everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the important principles of leadership is to have humility. Yeah. And to surround yourself with people who know more than you do. Absolutely. Some people see that as a threat. And so I encourage people to see that as a gift and not a threat. You know, I don't know how to do everything in my business. And so I've brought on a couple of unbelievable people. And you know what? Sometimes it takes time to find those unbelievable people. I made a few hiring mistakes here and there. Yeah. I think everybody does. But now I'm so grateful to these people because they are so much better than I am at certain things. And also I don't have the time to do everything. You can't grow if you want to hold on to everything and do it yourself.
That's right. Yeah. I learned this years ago. I think it was John Maxwell who told me this principle, first of all, and I tell people now, Elise, and the more you get to know me, you'll understand. I do 4 things really well in life. Okay. I'm really good at these 4 things. Outside of those 4, I'm mediocre at best. And so I have learned to hire people who are outside of those 4 so that I can grow, so they can grow. Because if I try to do their job, it really diminishes them and locks them in place. Our company is so much bigger and better today because I learned my 4 things, and I try my best to stay right there and hire everything else done. Let other people who God has created with abilities like you, who love detail and executing and things. Praise God. I'm going to hire somebody like Elise to get all that stuff done so that I can go create some more ideas and make more partnerships and gain more clients for the rest of my team. Right. But it's understanding yourself. And that's leadership. That's understanding me, but it's also understanding who I need on my team and equipping them to be able to thrive and love their job so that they're not going to leave me, because I don't want turnover, because that's just a hassle. And you talked earlier how much of a pain that is. So I'm sure we could probably go on for an hour or 2.
I have no doubt that I think you and I are more excited than we probably should be. It's almost funny how excited we are about this topic. It is. But yeah, we could.
How can somebody connect with you? Let's say there's an attorney out there who's just listening to this going, yeah, you're hitting all my buttons right now, or I want to know more information. What's the best way for them to take a step in your direction?
So I invite people to visit my website. It's actually a brand new website, so I'm pretty excited about it. And it's thelawyersedge.com. So just go to thelawyersedge.com and you can contact me that way really easily. I'll get right back to you. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you there. And we've got some, things on our website. I've got, as you mentioned earlier, I've got the Lawyer's Edge podcast. So there are some amazing people that I've been able to talk to who offer really valuable information and perspectives. And then we've also got some articles on our website as well. So, you can come and get some free stuff and see if it's helpful to you.
That's great. And let me just encourage people to do that. Just take that next step. You've heard just a snippet from Elise and how she thinks about things and some of the insights she has. Her website is a goldmine. The podcast is really cool. Just click on the podcast page. You can listen to the podcast that she has there and the different people she's brought to the table. But even if you're not an attorney, you can go to there and learn some things, because what she teaches, even though she's a former attorney and she works with attorneys, business owners, by and large, can learn from this, because it's leadership, it's understanding culture and the importance of our people. And when you get those right, that helps you grow your business. So many times we just focus on the tactics and the skill sets of marketing, which is really important. But if you have great marketing and poor people, it's a recipe for disaster. So Elise, thank you for what you do. I know it's very valuable, and I know you're providing a lot of value for tons and tons of people. And I'm grateful to have you part of the Expert Speak family, and sharing what you had with us today. I hope we can keep going and maybe have you back on again.
But, I would love that.
Reach out to Elise at thelawyersedge.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And stay tuned for another great episode of Experts Speak when we bring somebody else on who will be just as engaged and passionate about what they're going to talk about as Elise is here. So Elise, thanks again for being with me today.
Thank you, Michael. This was so much fun.